Well, hello there. How are you doing today? Today I will be telling you the truth about why I think the Emperor is a silly Billy, and I decided to put on this epic music in the background, even though it is technically a Space Marine march, because technically my Rip Drakes are Space Marines, but they're not super big on the Emperor, so it's cool. It's all cool, my guys. But yeah, we're gonna talk a little bit about why I think the Emperor is a silly Billy. The Emperor is one of those characters that I think is very weird and divisive in terms of 40k fandom, and I think that he's given a lot more praise than he probably warrants. I think he's kind of a dummy, and I think that there's a variety of reasons for that I'll get into here, but I will just say right up front, I think one of the biggest ones is I think he's inconsistently written, but we're gonna get into it. So okay, so this is also could just be called why Cat doesn't like the Emperor. I always find it very interesting that so many people who are into the loyalist legions always call Horus a traitor and all these other things. But of course, the idea is that kind of ignores the whole thing with the Thunder Warriors, where the Emperor had the Thunder Warriors taken out back and shot, when they were no longer useful, like a traitor would. Like a horrible, horrible traitor man. I think we see just in this one instance, a big reason to not like the Emperor is simply that he is simply out for his own goals, and he is willing to discard you the second you are no longer useful to those goals. It would appear, and I've heard this about some interesting figures, actually apparently similar, I think it was Nelson Mandela's daughter. Yeah, she said that he was a great man, but not a great father. And I kind of think of the Emperor in a similar way in the sense that not that he's a great man, but I think he is much more concerned with the overall state of humanity rather than individuals. But because we're this kind of individualistic species that, we work in groups, but we still have individual thoughts and ideas and stuff like that. I think that's just kind of a bad way to try and control and lead humanity, and he already shows just with this one instance of the Thunder Warriors being put to death that he is willing to put you to death. I think you should consider that. Treating his son as disposable. Yeah, this is here is an image of one of my favorite Primarchs, Lorgar, whipping himself after Monarchia because the Emperor chastised him and he made his entire legion kneel down before him. Now, I think the Emperor definitely has favorites, and you can definitely see that he has favorites. Some of his sons are just very clearly he doesn't actually care about them, and even the tiniest bit. He doesn't even pretend to care about them. For rather large portions of them, he just puts them forward, he uses them as tools, and he calls them tools. And we know that he thinks of them as tools. This guy is a terrible father. But I think that's not really saying anything too crazy. I think even people who like the Emperor think that he's a terrible father. At least that's a large thing of what I've heard and seen from a lot of different people who want to talk about this sort of thing. I would also definitely say that he basically almost forced Lorgar into treachery. You gotta think, Lorgar was basically worshiping the Emperor for, century, almost 2 centuries, I think. He was worshiping him for more than 100 years, spreading the imperial truth as he saw it, which was that the Emperor was a god, and things like that. And rather than stopping this earlier on, talking to him, maybe finding a way to reuse that energy towards something that the Emperor was more liked more, the Emperor just kind of allowed Lorgar to do this until he could come around and be very dramatic about it and be a big baby. And I mean the Emperor is a big baby in this instance, as in it's very funny to me when Lorgar is shamed on Monarchia. There's a part where Gilman's like, "Are you done with your tantrum?" And it's dude, you just helped raise your father, raise a city full of completely innocent people for no other reason than it upset your dad, and he's now having a big baby tantrum over something that he could have dealt with 1,000 times over. It's it's like even when Gilman is being one of the better Primarchs, he's still such a like a arrogant dickhead, and he's also like such a bootlick when it comes to the Emperor. Like the Emperor talks about him like he's a toy and disposable, but he's like, oh well, you know, I gotta be loyal to the Emperor, gotta be loyal. But yes, he treats his sons as if they are disposable. We frequently see him do things where it's like, okay, even when things are very bad, like when Conrad Kurz is taking over planets, it doesn't matter that he's doing all these horrible terrorist type things. It's only a matter of like he wants him to get this job done. He's a tool, and he doesn't actually care what happens to the people underneath that tool. He just wants more planets. Although something that's kind of funny about this is if you actually stop and look at it, the Lorgar's planets were much more loyal and much less likely to rebel. And even like towards the end of the Great Crusade, before even the heresy starts happening, we see the Imperium is kind of already frayed, and then a lot of planets that, for instance, Conrad took over were already like kind of on the verge of flipping anyway. Oh, this is a continuation of that. He does basically tell Gilman that he's a tool. Gilman talks about how like when he was seen again by his father, he was very clearly looked at like he was a tool. And it's like, well, once you understand that, you realize that he was just putting on an act to get all of these guys to side with him. And he is only making things worse. I mean, it's almost amazing to me that Gilman is still as loyal as he is to the Emperor, considering like once you see the whole breadth of what's happening, once you see the genocidal madman for what he is, and once he sees that he looks at you like a tool, it's kind of weird to me to kneel to that. But at the same time, I understand that if he completely, at least in 40k, if he completely broke away, would probably just get them killed. I mean, they also already know that the Emperor is willing to kill Primarchs, so, you know. Oh, he's also very dumb because of this. He's dooming basically the entire Imperium by not telling them about chaos. He made a concerted effort to deny the truth of the Immaterium, to deny that chaos was a thing, to deny that chaos had any real threat. In The End and the Death, Volume 2, it is revealed when they were reading Malcador's notes that Malcador thought that chaos, that they should tell the people in the Imperium about chaos, and that by keeping everyone ignorant, they were doing a very bad thing, and in not really elucidating them into the threats. Like, why are they telling them, hey, stop doing the Psyker stuff? Well, I think the main reason he actually tells them to stop doing the Psyker stuff is the Emperor capitulates. But he only trusts himself. Like, he knows at least some of the dangers of the warp, and he's messed around with the Chaos Gods. We definitely know that he's been doing something weird on Molech, and it seems like he was either stealing power from the gods or creating some kind of deal with the gods. Not really 100% clear, but no. So no one understands the dangers of the warp because of the choices of the Emperor. The Emperor is a megalomaniac who thinks that he's the only one that's good enough to understand the dangers of chaos. The existence of the Interrex proves that he is just completely wrong about this. The existence of the Eldar understanding the temptations of the warp prove that he is wrong about this. There's a whole variety of things that would demonstrate that he is the complete and utter nutter butter for doing it like this and for not actually telling people up front. I think these three reasons alone is kind of enough of a reason to point the finger at him and call him what he is, which is like a horrible psychopath, but you know. Oh, this is another thing. He is incredibly impatient. Alanius Pearson, I almost called him Alanius Pius, but from which once again we see in The End and the Death, Volume 2, ends up confronting the Emperor and he calls him out. He calls him out for being so impatient, for always going for the fastest method to do things. It becomes abundantly clear the more you read about the Horus Heresy and the Emperor himself, is that he is incredibly impatient, and because of this, he's constantly taking shortcuts that are damning him in the end. He's doing these things like he's trying to push things further than they need to go. Like, why, for instance, does the Imperium need to go so fast? Oh, well, we could come up with a lot of different excuses, but the main one I can actually figure out is that not to figure out, but like, it seems abundantly clear to me, is that he's impatient. He doesn't want to give time to like really establish like a better system and better worlds and things. No. What he wants is he wants things done his way and done now. He desires subjugation. What he really wants is loyalty and unwavering loyalty. And we see that when the Perpetuals left, it was because they saw what he was becoming. They saw that he was becoming this horrible tyrant that wanted nothing but the subjugation of the galaxy under his vision. He is a complete totalitarian. Erda and Astarte feel blah. Anyway, we see that the various different Perpetuals, as we interact with them more, especially in like the Siege of Terror books, we see that they abandon him because they more and more were seeing what he was becoming and what his vision for the galaxy actually was. And yeah, we could say that he's incredibly powerful, so maybe there's some reason to be like, yes, he should be the one ruling, but we know what he really wants is to control everything. Oh, he's also an antisocial git. It's very funny when you think about, like, he locks himself away to work on the webway, but doesn't tell anyone what he is doing, which breeds mistrust. If you just read the interactions the Emperor has with most of his sons, he very clearly has, like, a lot of these antisocial personality traits, and he ends up basically making tons of people mistrust him, making Horus in particular mistrust him, as well as other members of the Great Crusade after he leaves, because he doesn't tell them anything. He just goes and is like, no, you're all going to obey me because you have to, and you have to obey me because I'm the Emperor. Like, and he doesn't even think for a second about like trying to actually foster loyalty among his sons. He doesn't care about loyalty among his sons because he thinks that they're tools who will just not rebel. There is some stuff to imply that maybe the Horus Heresy was orchestrated by the Emperor, but nothing too solid. There's just some stuff hinting that like maybe that was at least part of the plan, or considered part of the plan. But because he's an antisocial git and he locks himself away and he doesn't tell people what he's doing, more and more mistrust is bred amongst his people. And let's also be honest here, like, if you want to talk about the Emperor being a leader, he's just kind of showing over and over again that he's a bad leader, that he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. Especially doesn't know what he's doing with people. He's using his sheer force of, like, psychic will and stuff like that to just get his way. And I would argue that maybe this would point to another thing about the Emperor, which is that he's never really had to face the consequences for his actions. He's a level of powerful enough that really, who's going to bring him to account? Does not actually believe in anything other than his own right to rule. I think this becomes more and more abundantly clear, especially like, well, consider Lorgar. He supposedly says he wants to cancel out all worship, but because that might take away from his ability to rule, and he can just have Lorgar just push forward and then deal with it later. It shows that he doesn't really believe in much of anything in that term, because he claims to want all this atheism and stuff like that, but it's like, oh no, minor inconvenience. You can talk about how he wants to save humanity from the terror, but once again we have the Night Lords, which demonstrate that's not actually true. You can say he wants to build a better worlds, but he doesn't, because we see once again with the World Eaters and other tools who just murder and butcher and kill, that he doesn't actually care. He just wants to rule. He wants everything to bend to his will. He's a megalomaniac. He's a monster. And we see this time and again. He's also completely unwilling to let anyone else, like, really state their opinion if it disagrees with him. Oh, he's also very clearly wrong about Xenos and The Cabal and the Interrex demonstrate this. The Cabal is a bunch of different aliens that come together there to fight against the Primordial Annihilator, which is Chaos. And they talk to Alpharius to try and get him on their side. The Interrex is a human civilization that also has a bunch of aliens living amongst them. The Emperor's only recourse for Xenos is to destroy them. He is constantly about like destroying anything that disagrees with him and pushing that forward. He's just a tyrant, and we can see through the example of the Cabal and the Interrex and others, by the way, even into the 41st millennium, like we see something like the Tau Empire, and we see various other groups using humans alongside Xenos and Xenos alongside humans, that not all Xenos are antithetical to human life. We also know that because the Eldar were willing to teach certain civilizations, that even the Eldar are, you know, which he thought were too duplicitous, were willing to help and train people and show them the way. The biggest reason that the Eldar didn't want to help the Emperor is because A, they were afraid of him, and B, he was a megalomaniac and a tyrant. I'm sorry. He wants to crush resistance. That's all it is. There is one way, and that is his way. Oh, he's also a horrible genocidal bastard. Going in with that, he's willing to kill pretty much any Xenos species. He's willing to slaughter entire populations, bombard planets. He's willing to kill anybody who gets in his way, and anyone who does not bend the knee. Simple as. There's no room in this for any disagreement or discussion. The only people that he is forced to not just bend to his will are the people of Mars. And I mean, he lies about being the Omnissiah there, and that's just because he can't do it. He can't really conquer everything without their help, without the help of their scientists and their engineers and things like that. What we see here is that basically in any other thing where Chaos wasn't the thing, where Chaos wasn't like the main big villain, the Emperor would definitely be the villain. It's actually pretty interesting. There's a little scene in the beginning of the Alpharius book, the Alpharius Primarch book, where Alpharius is overhearing some people talk about how there's a horrible, evil tyrant taking over in the Himalayasian mountains, and then the Emperor shows up like, oh, hey, it's that guy. Because though we all know he's a butt munch. He also causes more human suffering than literally any other figure in history. Now, he puts so many people in these factories where they do nothing but work all day. He's willing to sacrifice humans to get his end goals. And then on top of that, because of his actions, because of the Imperium he created, and we could argue about the decay and things like that, he gave the Chaos Gods their ultimate tools. He got owned there, and he created the ultimate warriors of chaos, which are the Chaos Space Marines, who cause tremendous suffering. The Imperium itself is an almost never-ending tide of suffering. Even during the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy, he caused so much human suffering. And yeah, occasionally we can see things where he'll help out an individual. And like Mechanicum, for instance, there's a part where he helps heal the knee joint of a knight on Mars. That's nice, I guess. And he can do a lot. He can do lots of things, but he simply caused just a tremendous amount of destruction, a tremendous amount of pillaging, also that he could take it for his own projects and distribute it where he wanted. And because of him, because of him, more than anything, we have the Imperium. We have the rotten heart of 40K, where everything is bad and all the suffering is happening. It's all because of him. Oh yeah, and I'm still calling him a man-baby tyrant, which this is mostly because every time we see someone actually disagree with him, he's willing to do anything to shame them and destroy them. I kind of repeating myself there a little bit. Oh, also, he's now this silly corpse, which I think is very funny. There is some implication that he might come back at some point. Oops. Didn't mean to do that. But, you know, for right now, he's dead. Dead as a doornail. Or just about as dead as a doornail in terms of his physical body. Although mentally, he's very clearly still powerful. I think we do see that he is... the one positive thing I can say about him is that he's anathema to chaos. and that is kind of cool. I guess there's also some question about whether or not the Emperor, as we understand the character, is actually the same Emperor that people are worshiping. I think that this is interesting because if you stop and think about it, like, for instance, in the Horus Heresy books, the Emperor that they are worshiping, like Euphrates Keeler and all these others, is willing to do miracles, saves people, heals people all the time, and isn't just a horrible tyrant. We could always say that, well, the Emperor was maybe just wrong, but he wasn't just wrong. He was wrong in such a way where he destroyed basically the entire galaxy. Because of this one man's vision, we now have the state of 40k that we're in now, which I would argue makes him pretty much the biggest villain of the setting, really. I think that if he came back, well, all we would see is maybe Great Crusade 2 Electric Boogaloo, and it would probably just get worse. I think that one of the best things that could possibly happen to the Imperium is if the Emperor actually died and the Imperium died, and it got shattered. That'd be one of the best things that happened for all the people in the Imperium. They would divide themselves up into a bunch of billions of, well, not billions, I'm sorry, but a lot of different factions, and then just continue to fight. And I think that's much more interesting. And I mean, that's what I do with my Rift Drakes. My Rift Drakes are basically their own faction, really. They are still technically loyal to the Imperium, but not really. They're loyal in word, but not, like, in actuality. They're willing to send Space Marines out and send their troopers out to help, but they're much more concerned with their own stuff. But yeah, I think that basically, and I know I kind of repeated myself and I just kept saying that he was a horrible tyrant, but he is. I mean, and it just constantly shows in the way he acts and the things he does to people. The fact that he is willing to sacrifice so many to achieve his goals, which we do not even actually see like a demonstration of those goals making anything better. What we see is, oh, well, the war effort is very powerful, and there's a lot of people who are obtaining power through this like weird vacuum that he's created, but like we see very little actual improvement of the lives of the people. We see that some Xenos planets get overtaken and get better because of the Imperium. That's good, but in a lot of cases what we see is the silence of dissent. We see that there is one way and one way forward, which is based on a blatant lie, and now here we are. The Imperium is a failed state, more or less. I mean, the one thing it has going for it is its military might, and I would argue that that's not all that great when you actually consider everything that has to go into it. I just think that the Emperor is a real bastard, and I think that it kind of sucks because like one of the only gods that's like good and like official canon, or is at least mostly kind of good, is like the Emperor. Although I do sometimes wonder if, like, once again, if the Emperor that they worship is actually just a straight up separate entity to the Corpse Emperor that we have today. But yeah, that's just my thoughts, and I want to talk about why I didn't really care for the Emperor. I don't want to make a ton of complainy videos, but there's a couple of things that I do want to get out of my craw, because this thing sticks in my craw. But yes, remember, we can have brotherhood, we can have the glory of being Space Marines, about being humans, about being Votann, about being all kinds of different things without the Emperor. We can fight together and create a better galaxy. We don't need this schmuck. But there's also the whole thing where like sometimes this schmuck for some reason does huge miracles and owns Nurgle, which, hey, if you could do that more often, maybe I'd forgive some of it. If you actually demonstrated that you were, willing to help truly. But I guess that is a video for another time where I get into the idea of the Emperor not actually being a god and that being technically a separate entity from the Emperor. But, hey, for right now, I'm going to call it good. I hope you enjoyed my little ranting about how the Emperor is a horrible tyrant and a monster. And I hope that you all have an absolutely wonderful day, and I love you, and God loves you, and bye, love you, bye.